Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on the Infinite Prosperity Podcast. My name is Louisa Havers, and I help high achievers, entrepreneurs, and coaches lift the lid on life and business so that they can live at their highest value. Each episode, we will bring you our favourite founders, CEOs, and guest experts to share with you their insights and strategies to expand your wealth consciousness, your spiritual leadership, and aligned business strategies. We know that living in alignment with your soul's mission is what fulfills you, and we are here to show you how to achieve this in an energetically aligned way. If you haven't already, be sure to claim your free abundance activation in the Akashic Records. Go to louisahavers.com/gift to unlock your abundance activation today. And if you'd like my support in having aligned success in life and business, then contact me at www.louisahavers.com and let's explore together if it's an aligned match. Get ready to live at your highest value and to expand into your next level of money as you elevate and receive more. You create more for others. Righty ho, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to this week's show. I'm super excited as I am joined by Starlyn Haneman, who is an anxiety freedom coach. In this episode, we dive into taking control back from anxiety. So this is a really powerful conversation and something that I think everybody can benefit from. So excited to share this with you. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to our conversation today. I am so excited. We're talking about taking back control from anxiety with a phenomenal coach and leader, an expert in this field. Welcome, Starlyn Haneman. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Louisa.
So excited for our conversation today. Well, let's start. I always ask everybody now, what does prosperity mean to you? We are talking about infinite prosperity ultimately. So we'd love to, just get your take on that. What does prosperity mean to you?
Well, I used to think that prosperity was strictly financial, that it was all about money. And through my own journey, I have realized that although money is a part of it, without your health and your happiness, you cannot have prosperity. So for me, it's like thriving in all areas of my life and feeling a very deep sense of peace. That for me is prosperity.
Yes, peace. Absolutely. I completely agree. I completely agree. I love that. I think, and so many people do reflect that. I think that, we think of abundance being, it's all about money. But ultimately without our health, then that which is true wealth, isn't it? Often people will say health is our true wealth, is that we really actually everyone is wanting and desiring to have prosperity or abundance in all aspects of life. We don't want to trade one for another. So I have to ask you before we dive into all the things, because I just mentioned it before we started recording. I love your sign that you have behind you. That girl has always been a wildfire, all defiance and gasoline. That is so awesome. Tell me, what does that mean for you? Because it's positioned so prominently by you. I was like, there's got to be a story behind that.
I feel like for me, defiance, like I think my mother especially, but my parents definitely felt that I was maybe a defiant, strong-willed, very stuck in my ways kind of child. And I always took that as a negative, but I am really like taking that as a positive now that like I just know what I want, who I am, and I'm defying, rebelling against what is expected of me by the world and that, and lighting a fire about it, Just gonna blow some stuff up.
I love it. I
No
love
more
it.
status quo.
That's how change happens, when you're able to really like make huge change in a very fast way. It is, I know that you talk about rebellion a lot in, your being a rebelling against anxiety. I think that's how you talk about it. This feels like it's part of this. I'd love to dive more into this concept of rebellion, to speak to all the rebels out there as you talk about rebel wellness. What do you mean by this in terms of, because those are two terms that, well, I've never heard them together, which I love. I was like, yes, this is awesome. So tell us more about what you mean by rebel wellness.
Well, I think that we have these expectations of what maybe wellness is and how we're supposed to go about it. And I am more about doing things in your own way. I'm a rebel and I like to do things my own way. I used to be a motorcycle mechanic, so that's like where it really kind of like goes back to is like I was rebelling about what it meant to be like a woman or a female. Like it's like I was the polar opposite of kind of what was expected. So that's always been a part of me. And for a part of my journey, it's actually, I think, what led me to having anxiety was because I was not rebelling and I wasn't being me. I was trying to conform and be what society thought I should be or what I thought that society thought I should be. I was just assuming, I guess.
Mm.
And um, I was trying to keep it safe. And so now I want to help people tap into who they are, be the rebel that they are, but also rebel against what society says health has to be and how you have to go about getting it. Because I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can reach health and wellness through many different aspects. And so I want to help people find out what their way is.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely. We were receiving programming all the time, aren't we? And so often even subliminal programming, so we're not even aware of of it. And then realizing that that is actually creating some, stresses in our body, conflicts within our subconscious as well, in terms of whether we should do something, inverted commas, or not. Whether it's we hear so many things of like counting calories. You've got to run a certain amount of hours, minutes, whatever it is, takes 10,000 steps a day. All these, our consciousness is having all this bombardment around what we should or shouldn't do and what's the right thing and our parental programming and all those things. So I love how you're freeing people up from all those expectations. And I
Yeah, when
go
it
for it.
feels so restrictive, I feel like we limit ourselves and where it's like, oh, it has to look this way. And if you can't do it that way, you almost don't even try. Or if you don't want to do it that way, you don't try. And or it just doesn't feel good. So you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to run 5 miles. So I'm just not going to be physically fit. When that's not how it has to look at all.
Yeah. And do you know what I think in terms of one of the things I talk about with my clients is there's a quiz that you can do called the Four Tendencies, where it helps you understand what your tendency is when there's an expectation of you. And one of them is a rebel. And you were talking about, I was like, music to the ears of all the rebels out there, thinking, I don't have to do it that way. I don't want to do it that way. Because it's almost like that, what it is, that expectation for people with that personality type. The moment those expectations come in, we resist. We don't want to do it. I'm saying we because I'm a rebel as well as one of my aspects is immediately I don't want to do what I'm told. To be able to actually have that freedom to be able to allow to explore, to create in a way that is more who you be and you choose. Because I think choice is really key, isn't it, for all the rebels out there.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, Gretchen Rubin and those four tendencies.
Incredible, incredible work. I think it's really opened up. Yeah, if people haven't checked that out, I highly recommend checking it out because I think it can create so much stress when we aren't working in alignment with who we be. I would love to get your take on you talk about anxiety, and I know that every journey each entrepreneur has to being able to offer the services to their communities has a story behind it, and I know that in our previous conversations you've mentioned about your journey, but I would love our listeners to hear about your journey in terms of how did you start your business, what was that turning point for you that made you realize how anxiety was playing in your life, and when you're like, nope, no more.
Yes. So I think I've had anxiety probably for a large portion of my adult life, but A, didn't realize it. And B, once I think I did start to realize it, I did not want to actually get a diagnosis because that felt like a weakness. But where it really started, I think, was as a motorcycle mechanic, I was sh- put into the more of the masculine energy. I was put into this box of like, if I'm going to fit in, I have to be this way. And then you fast forward to I get pregnant, and then it's more of a feminine energy in that role. And I didn't know how to do that either because I had these ideas of what society expected of me as a mom. I didn't realize I could do it my own way, you know? So I went from the masculine to the feminine. I got very confused, and I like to do things right, and I like to do them well. Perfectionism is a key player in my life for sure. And so I always felt like I was struggling. I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't doing it good enough as far as parenting went. Because it is hard. You feel like you're struggling. You don't know if you're winning, you're losing. You don't know what's happening. But it all felt really hard. So I started drinking as a it was always like, a casual sort of thing, and then it became more of a coping mechanism because I would start to feel anxious. I would feel feelings. I didn't wanna feel feelings. I didn't wanna feel anger or resentment, and these things that I would feel as a mom towards my child because I felt, "That's bad, I shouldn't feel that way."
Mm.
So I was really struggling with anxiety, drinking to cope with it, and I did not want to go to a doctor once I did realize that maybe these 2 things could be, this could be happening because I didn't want weakness. So I continued with the drinking and coping that way until it started to lead to panic attacks. And I was like, okay, I can't melt on my kitchen floor, unable to breathe and not know why it's happening. I have children to take care of because at this point I had two. So I finally was like, I'm gonna go to the doctor. And of course, there's all the things you hear out there about how you can, deal with anxiety and things that can help. But meditation didn't seem like something I could do. That felt very uncomfortable. I didn't wanna sit with my feelings, I was trying to not feel feelings, so meditation sounded impossible. My mind races, I didn't wanna sit there. Gratitude journaling, I was like, "That's stupid, who wants to write what they're grateful for?" Like, there was all these preconceived ideas I had about it, and I was like, I wanted the quick fix. So I went to the doctor, they gave me medication, and I started taking it. And I found I did not like how I felt on it. I just felt less like myself.
Mhm.
Slightly dulled, just not me. But it also caused me to black out if I drank.
Whoa.
Yeah. So if you have 2 beers and you black out, you go, "That's strange. That doesn't seem like normal." And then I realized, "Oh, that's probably why they tell you not to drink while you're taking anxiety medication.
Right.
That checks out."
Note to self.
Yeah. So after I did that twice, I was like, "You know what? There has to be another way." And I am a do it yourself kind of girl. If I decide I'm going to do something, I do it. I go all in. And so I was like, "Okay." And I started to actively work towards not drinking. I started reading books and I started meditating and journaling, the 2 things that I was adamant I wasn't going to do. And you want to know what? It worked. It worked, but it took me realizing I didn't wanna feel feelings. I had never put those words together. I just didn't like it. I didn't like being uncomfortable. So, I started getting really comfortable with being uncomfortable and realizing I was safe and okay, and started moving from there. And then I wanted to help more people do it.
I love it. Wow, what a transformation to be able to self-coach yourself, to take yourself on that journey and to really recognize as you started to implement all those things that you were avoiding in the beginning. To go, oh gosh, it actually it's actually working. God damn it.
Yes, exactly. I was like, "Oh, they were right. I could have done this years ago."
Darn it, darn it. So you've been on a huge transformational journey for yourself, and I know that one of the things that you mentioned actually when in the information that you sent over, but as part of our pre-conversation around, you have three pillars that you help people with to creating their dream life, and I'd love to hear what they are because everyone has a sort of their own unique way of helping people on their journeys. So what's yours? What are these three pillars that you help people with?
Yes. The first one I think is the most important pillar, and that is tuning in and trusting. It is learning to trust yourself because we, especially as women, I feel, have given away our trust. We don't believe in ourselves. We think that we need to listen to someone else like they know us better. We have been living in our bodies our entire lives. We know us better than anyone. And we need to trust that we have intuition in our bodies and that our bodies have this wisdom that they're trying to tell us. If
Mm,
you are anxious, why are you anxious? What is it? Like, get curious about it. So tune into that and then trust that you have the answer. And that is, of course, easier said than done. But that is like a huge part of like continually going back to it and working on your mindset and not being afraid of, what's happening in your body. So
mm.
that's the big pillar.
Okay,
This
big one.
this
Trust yourself.
yes, trust yourself. The next one is mastering the basics. I deeply believe that mental health and physical health cannot be separated into the mental and the physical. We are one being.
Mm,
It's all works together. And if your physical health is not being taken care of, your mental health is going to suffer. And if your mental health isn't taken care of, your physical is going to suffer. So it's starting to like get those basics down where you are taking care of yourself physically, you're eating well, you're sleeping. But so many people struggle with these very basic things. They want to make it be more complicated than it is. It's not. You can do it very simply and take baby steps. It's not going to change overnight, but those slow little incremental changes that you base like those basics will build that foundation to a greater, like more sustainable, happy life. And then the third one is rest and repeat because we are a hustle culture.
mm.
Resting, I will admit, I am still a work in progress when it comes to rest. I have to coach myself almost every time I want to rest. Do I deserve this? Like, what have I done that like makes it where I've done enough that it's okay to rest? Those sorts of crazy questions where it's like, I am a human being and it is okay to rest. You don't have to make it be something that you deserve. Like, there's absolutely no reason for that. But our hustle culture says that like you must push hard and then when you get done pushing, you can rest. But I'm I don't want that to be the case anymore.
Yes, I completely agree, and I think this is that culture is behind so many people burning out and not being able to. It's all linked, isn't it? From what you said, I love the pillars that you have, helping people to really trust themselves and to be able to listen to their body because we can get so good at kind of living in our heads and cutting off the rest of our bodies and often people will certainly I have these conversations with clients where they've got so used to cutting off I was going to say cutting off their head, but cutting off their connection with their the rest of their body that they don't really know what it feels like to feel the different emotions like or they've been used to having this sort of low level of anxiety rumbling away that actually it feels normal rather
Mhm.
than no that's not normal. They might
Yeah,
think that that low level of anxiety is them resting but
yeah.
because they've got so used to it, if that makes sense. And so it's like, how does someone know? How do they know when they're anxious if they've what are the signs that they can start to pay attention to so they can bring that connection back in?
I guess that what you would start to want to look at is like, what does it feel like when you're at peace? Because I feel like there are times where it's like you might have a low level of anxiety most of the time, but I feel like there will still be times that that anxiety drops off and you will feel a more calm state. So it's like, okay, do you notice that you have more of a heart rate sort of situation like that? For me, my anxiety is all in my chest. I know lots of
Mm,
people feel it in different places. Mine is all in my chest, whether it's like the breathing or almost like a drowning sensation when it was really bad. It felt like I was drowning and I just couldn't get air. And so it's learning to tap into those things like if you were really feeling good, what would not be there? And getting curious about it, right? Like, and then when different things for me, the easiest way was to when something happened and I would feel a sensation in my body, like a restrictive or constricting feeling, is to like stop and be like, what just happened? Getting really curious. We don't get curious enough. We're just like, that's just part of how it is. I just got to push through. But it's like, why? Because you could change how you're navigating life. You could change how you go about things, whether it's physically or mentally. Like I can do the exact same thing, but I can change my mindset of how I'm doing it and not feel anxiety about it. It's just like, how am I viewing this? Do I have
Mm.
to do this or do I get to do this? What is gonna be the outcome for which way I choose. And you can do a lot just with changing your mindset and not necessarily change the entire situation, but really using your anxiety and your feelings, your emotions as guideposts and getting curious around that.
Love that. So that piece of this shifting your perception from I have to do it to I'm choosing to do this.
It's all about choice. It's all about choice. Because if you're not choosing to do it, like it's like, I have to go to work. Do
Mm.
you? Do you have to go to work? Because I would argue that you do not have to go to work. You choose to go to work because you want to have a certain lifestyle.
Mm.
You choose like, you don't have to go to work. You could just pass on all that and roam around on the streets. You get to go to work. You have a job. You have a mind that's functioning. Look at the positive.
Mm.
Start looking at that gratitude journal. What am I grateful for? And if you hate your job, start getting curious about what you hate about it and taking actions. You're not stuck. You're you're a human being. You can go out and get a different job. There's no one holding you there. We live in the United States. Nobody's forcing you. There's no slavery here anymore. You can choose. You're not in the United States. I'm in the United States, but for
Yeah.
most for most like, industrialized, like we are not slaves. We get to choose what we do. So notice that. Write it down. Be grateful for it and to be like, I don't like this anymore. What can I choose to do next?
Yeah, so moving away from that programming of having no choice. And it's interesting around that piece that you were saying around because using the word slave can be very triggering for so many people because of course Black history and the history that we have around the world as well. So I think it's just poignant to kind of acknowledge that and recognize how that programming is within our culture as well, of course, around through media, society, where we can receive all this programming that we don't have choice. So I love how you're bringing back for those of us that do have that freedom in this now moment to be able to ungrapple that programming and to remind ourselves that we have got choice and we don't have to give our power away to someone else or to something. Often it's not even to anybody, it's just away.
Yeah. Well, we've been programmed by, like, maybe our parents. My dad, I got some deep programming from my dad. You must work hard, you must work long hours, you must give your life to that company, and that's how you do it. And so I am still working on, like, deconditioning that because now starting my own business, it's, do I have to put in 60 hours in my own business to be successful? I don't wanna put in 60 hours.
No.
Like, I'm doing this because I want to have more freedom, but my brain keeps going, "Oh, but remember, if you're gonna be successful, you need to work 100 hours a week because that's what my dad did." I don't wanna do that. I have children. I wanna see my children.
There's so many layers to this, and of course, and then as we go against the programming that we've had, the body's nervous system gets triggered, and then more anxiety can come up because we
Yes.
haven't reprogrammed ourselves to be able to have that capacity to allow ourselves to bring in more money without working the 100 hours. No, thank you to the 100 hours.
But when those things do come up and that anxiety pops up, that's when you get curious again and be like, "What about that do I not like? What makes me feel uncomfortable about that?" And then start to question that. And when you have those questions and you get your answers back, you can start to, like, pull it apart and, like, deprogram yourself and be like, "I don't have to subscribe to that anymore."
Mm. Oh, this is music to my ears and music to our listeners' ears as well, because I know that everyone here is on their journey of personal development, wanting to and recognizing that our consciousness is always evolving and we are always inputting into our consciousness, whether we are intentionally doing it or not. And so, why not be intentional so that we can expand it? So, that piece that you mentioned there for me feels very expansive around being able to let's get curious, because aren't children so curious? That's how they grow, isn't it? Because they're
Yep,
curious, they're always asking great questions. What's that
yep.
age that kids, when they literally don't seem to stop asking questions? Is it like
I would say
2, 3, 4?
yes, but my 9-year-old is still in that stage. She is the most questioning child, and sometimes it drives me crazy, but other times I'm like, maybe that's just the universe just, like, reminding me, like, that I can
Questions are
be,
good.
to be curious and to ask all the questions. But yeah, I feel like 4 was a very questioning age for my children, and as a parent, it was maddening.
Yes.
But it's so incredible because they want to know everything and how and why, and if you can allow that, like, in your children, and that's a lot of why I do what I do now, and this, like, deprogramming of myself is I have children and I do not want them to have to go down the road that I went down. I want them to see it modeled for them, how to be curious around anxiety, how to allow your feelings, how to be uncomfortable and not try and run away from it. Because I think if you can
Mhm.
be uncomfortable with your feelings, how many other things in life can you be uncomfortable in, but still survive and be like, oh, resilience, there it is. Like,
That's it, isn't it? That we are all desire and need resilience, particularly as entrepreneurs, with the uncertainty in businesses and the economic climate and all the things that actually, as our emotional resilience grows and we truly embody and know that we can create our own economy, that is so powerful so that we're not in that space of the anxiety bubbling up in reaction to whatever it is that we're seeing, going on in the world, in the economy and all those things. Emotional resilience is where it's at. One of the things that you were talking about, being able to model it for your children, which I love, is that piece of really helping people to feel their emotions. Because I certainly think when I look back, life before the internet, you know, people weren't able to tap into the resources that we can tap into now, and I actually see it modeled that it's okay to express our feelings, our emotions, whereas before we would only see what was modeled to us within our families, but now we do have that freedom to start to see there are different options. We can see entrepreneurs who are really successful, whereas they might have been behind closed doors, previously, and all the things, which is just incredible. When you're working with your clients, I'd love to know in terms of, because it feels like that, the lid can come off and they know that you're in a safe pair of hands with you, and finally they can start to connect in with their emotions. What do you see as being one of the key benefits for people as they start to really able to express them and to not feel like they've got to hide the anxiety and cope with it in a different way? Because it just, that's like a volcano about to erupt if we try and put a lid on it.
yeah. I mean, so when you allow yourself to feel and like let those emotions like be expressed, and sometimes it only happens with me, like you don't even feel comfortable expressing around your family and friends because you
Mm.
never have. So it's a slow journey sometimes to be like, okay, safe with you, and then like kind of testing the waters of who, how does that look? Um, when you start to do that, you start to feel free. You don't feel like you're trying to restrict it and keep it all in. So maybe your sleep starts to get better, right? Like you're like,
Mm.
oh, look at that. Because like I said, mental and physical health, like you cannot separate those two. So it's like that sleep starts to get better. And then suddenly you're not craving donuts and like all of these like quick energy things or drinking gallons of coffee a day. And so it's like the sleep changes. And then next thing you know, like your eating will shift and morph. And then all of a sudden you're like, I have all this energy. And you're like, oh, I'm going to start like walking or like lifting weights. And it's like everything just slowly starts to morph. But I think my favorite thing for me personally as a parent is my level of calm and patience with my children went through the roof.
Mm.
And it probably did so as well with my husband,
He
honestly.
benefits too.
uh, but really with my kids, because when I was constantly feeling anxious and resentful and angry, It's like any little thing would happen and I would snap and then I'd be like, ah, did it again. But when I started to
Mhm.
take care of myself physically, while also being, the gratitude and the meditation, I calmed down, my nervous system calmed down, all these things started to happen, and suddenly I stopped yelling. It was the craziest thing. I used to yell all the time. One day I was like, I haven't yelled in weeks. What is happening? And it was like, whoa. And that was like when I really started to think, I think something's changing here. Like, it's not just that I've like quit drinking, but like I started to take stock of everything that had changed. And that was like the most noticeable because when you are anxious and you're tensed up and you're reactive.
Mm,
So if you can start being like proactive with your health rather than like reactive in, your emotions, it's like the amount of things that can change and open up, and then people start to just see you differently, and relationships will slowly change, and things might open up at work. Because at the time I was working in a corporate position, and it was things just started to fall into place there
mm.
because I didn't feel trapped in myself. Like it was suddenly like at work, I just started growing like crazy. And I was like, wow, like it's just amazing how when you get out of that anxious, like fight or flight response, that
Yeah.
the prosperity and the like all these things just sort of flow in with ease, really.
So true, so true. With just to circle back a bit, as you were talking about, as you let go of the anxiety and the, oh, I'm not yelling. You brought to my mind as some conversations that I've had with friends over the years, and reflecting back on their behavior and their coping mechanisms. And I remember one of my friends talking about she called it post pissed paranoia. I've got the three P's. You bring her up and go, "How are you?" She goes, "I've got the three P's, post pissed paranoia." Because the anxiety which was there all the time, but it would kind of kick in the sort of hangover phase. And other friends sort of saying that day after would be where they noticed the anxiety, but the anxiety was really there before, if that makes sense. But they sort of associated it with the hangover rather than actually your coping mechanism is trying to kind of dampen that anxiety, and then it's just coming through afterwards.
That's an interesting. I've never like looked at it that way, like the hangover side of things, like ha- like the after
Enhancing
effects
the
of it.
yeah. Sorry, what
Yeah,
did you say?
I would say the after effects of like
Mm,
if you're like struggling through like anxiety and then like I always felt it like after like I feel like I had a low lying amount that was just always there. Then it would
yeah.
peak all the time, and I just hated how I felt after I would have that big anxious, like,
Mm,
surge, and then how I would treat people.
mm.
But then didn't know how I didn't want to I wasn't great at apologizing, let's just say that. Like, I didn't know how to deal with that, like, it was just like, "It's just who I am, this is just me," and I didn't really, I guess, want to acknowledge that there was a lot that I could do about it. I thought that's just who I was, and people just had to take it or leave it.
And that's a huge transformation to recognize, hang on a second, I don't have to be this aspect of me that I'm not liking. And actually
Yeah.
I can choose to change it and put in the work, it is that inner work, isn't it? And I can get to do things like gratitude journals. Damn it,
Yeah.
they work. To be able to start to change those neural pathways and to be able to really start to make that long lasting change. I love your journey. It's just absolutely incredible what you've achieved, and being able to model it for your family as well is huge.
Thank you.
Absolutely huge. How can people come into your world, Starlyn? I know you've got a lovely free gift for everyone. Do tell us all the things. Your free gift. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I have a free gift right now. It's an anxiety SOS toolkit, and it kind of has some like quickie in the moment, sort of like de-escalation right now. Like you're at work and you're, I don't know, in the loo and you need to like come down right now because it's all happening. Or maybe you want some long-term uh, things to work on that could maybe help you kind of over time make some changes. So that anxiety SOS toolkit has both of those things in it. And that will also get you on my newsletter list where I send out, tips, tricks, things that are happening with me. I'm a very personal person where I just like to share a lot. I'm very vulnerable. So you can expect to have just like a very deep dive inside look at what's going on in my life. And then Instagram is where I hang out the most. That's where I'm at. So I'm at Starlyn Haneman. And then I'm also on Facebook at wholesome.rebel.wellness. And then my website also is wholesomerebelwellness.com.
Love it. Love it. We'll get all the links lined up for everybody as well in the descriptions on the various platforms. Thank you so much for that free gift as well. That's hugely generous. So thank you so much for that. And it's just been an absolute joy to have this conversation, to hear all your insights along the journey and how you're helping your clients. It's huge impact that you're making in the world.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Starlyn. And thank you, everyone who has been listening. We'd love to hear your takeaways. So do be sure to share this episode and tag us on Instagram and Facebook. Let us know what you took away from our conversation today. Until next time, sending you all lots and lots of love. Namaste. Thanks for listening to the Infinite Prosperity Podcast. And if you like what you've heard and want to know more, please go to louisahavers.com. We just appreciate you so much. So thank you for listening and hanging out with us. If there's anything that we can do for you, you can email us at louisa@louisahavers.com. Let my team know if you have any ideas for shows that you'd love to hear or topics you want me to talk about. Really looking forward to hearing from you. All right, that is it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today. Looking forward to connecting with you again. Until next time, namaste.